In the next couple of weeks, we'll be seeing the release of The Division 2. Now, recently the closed beta has been available to a lot of people, myself included. So I thought what I'd do today is have a bit of a look at gameplay footage from that, as well as starting off with a bit of a retrospective on my feelings about The Division itself, the original game. I'm James, and this is Sword and Keyboard. The Division is a cover-based shooter. It was released about 3 years ago to mixed reviews. Now, there's plenty of people who quite enjoyed it, myself included, but it did have very much that feeling of the time, alongside Destiny and other RPG-like shooters, and most notably the loot-heavy angle. To some degree, there's a bit of shared concept with the likes of Borderlands as well. So there's a little bit of crossover in terms of the loot collection, a slow grind of getting your gear leveled up. The Division suffers slightly more than certain of its contemporaries in that it aims for a reasonably realistic sort of world. Unlike, say, Borderlands and Destiny, you're fighting real-ish people. So there are certain expectations of effectively what a bullet should do to a human being that get absolutely ignored, understandably so for the sake of the game, but that does leave a kind of a jarring effect of needing to suspend disbelief pretty heavily when you can shoot a high-powered sniper rifle into the human skull and it sort of bounces off for the first 30 shots. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty sure that's not exactly how that would happen. But strange bullet physics aside, the Division was a reasonably good game. Got some decent fun out of it myself. The main importance there for me was sort of getting a community and getting a few friends to play with. Beyond that, it has an okay story. It's at least reasonably engaging, drops you into a believable world, and that world's actually rendered pretty nicely. There's sort of a general feeling of cold as well as you're sort of fighting through the streets of New York. The way the snow falls, you've got the steam from the vents in the ground. You feel as if you really understand how damn cold it is there, as well as you can get that sense of genuine suffering of the citizens as you walk through the city, when you can see just random people on the street who've either died due to the horrifying plague, or just trying to survive in a state of emergency that they're really not prepared for. And that carries along to a lot of other NPCs in the game, both in terms of the allies you make as you're working through the city, trying to clean up the streets, as well as some of the enemies themselves have at least vaguely plausible reasons for what they're doing. I mean, a lot of them aren't particularly imaginative. The pretty standard prison break scenario, for example. But there's at least a good sense of why they're there. In addition, there's been a lot of extra money put into the game after launch, and mostly paid DLC, of course, but in terms of the survival modes and standard sort of horde mode based gameplay, they've added a few little extra bits and pieces. In terms of that and the existing Dark Zone mechanic, which isn't greatly changed since launch, they've done a reasonably good job of making both the PvE and the PvP angles quite pleasant to work through. However, I do feel it has hit some of the same problems as a lot of games in the genre, in that once you reach a certain point in the game, when you're standing there shooting an enemy for a ridiculous number of times, like throwing like 50 to 100 bullets at them to make any sort of dent in their health, and slowly trying to work your gear score up. You just kind of reach the point of diminishing returns in what you're going for. Now, I'm aware that some people do enjoy that, and many RPGs cover the same sort of itch, where you're just trying to find that perfect sort of loot, and yeah, it does that reasonably well with the set items and exotics. But there is still that feeling that failed to engage me personally, that you just need to keep going in, keep doing your daily quests, and just making sure you get that sweet, sweet loot. Which, when you realise that's just numbers in a database going up, exactly the same as every other game, it gets a bit old pretty quickly. So that's kind of led to the position I'm in at the moment with The Division, in that pretty much from the point where the friends I played with gave up on it, I've maybe dropped in a handful of times to play the survival mode, but beyond that, before running the footage from this video, I don't think I picked up The Division for a good 6 months. It's a shame, really, because there is a solid concept there, but there's just something that's not keeping me hooked on it, really. So as you might imagine, I'm not super excited about The Division 2. I'm interested to see how it's going to turn out, hence why I picked up the private beta and gave it a bit of a spin. But without some serious change in how it plays and something to keep me genuinely hooked on it, I don't have particularly high hopes. But, keeping my mind open, decided to give it a bit of a go. So let's jump into some gameplay. So in terms of controls, it's pretty much a carbon copy of the first Division game. There's a bunch of new upgrades and ways of managing your abilities, but the general theme of the game, pretty much as you expect, is just a slightly more refined version of the existing control scheme. And absolutely no criticism there, with the exception of being stuck trying to roll into a piece of cover, which has been a common occurrence for me in the original Division. I've never really had too much trouble with the controls, other than a little bit of trouble with overzealous recoil, shall we say. But that's presumably there by design. Now, again, for context, the footage here is taken on Xbox One X, and to be fair, the game is pretty damn good looking. They've opted for a substantially warmer feel to this one, more summer tones going on. They've got an interesting theme with the green paint, presumably green paint, spread around, assuming a reference to the green plague from the previous game. But beyond that, personally, and it might just be due to the lack of knowledge of Washington itself, I'm not feeling the new setting. Now, it's all right. The city kind of appears to make sense and is believable. The new survivors in their little enclaves seem to give a reasonable sense of life to everything. But as I was running through and sort of playing through the missions, I don't know, there was a sense of desolation, which might well be an intentional sort of design choice there. But I kind of felt that it was a little quiet, a little lonely, and to be fair, what I'm probably just lacking was the guys I played the original Division with to make it a little more engaging. Which I guess indicates that you're probably going to have a little bit more fun than I did if you're actually playing with a group of people you know and play with a lot. So and your mileage may vary there. Beyond that, there's not really much to say. I mean, I've had a couple of issues with the AI pathfinding, which will presumably get sorted out either before or shortly after release. Everything, as I say, seemed a little bit quiet. But beyond that, it's kind of, to me, acting just like a Division expansion pack. Not meant harshly, of course. That is pretty much the common thread for sequels of this sort of type. But I don't know, there's nothing there to grab me. And given the setting, I mean, if you enjoy the sort of Washington setting, I'm sure you'll probably have great fun with the game, but there's nothing there to hook me. The survivors, an interesting concept as they are, they're not, again, it's just a personal lack of engagement with it, really, that leaves me not really planning on making the purchase. And I guess the other thing that really put me off when I was playing through the beta was hitting the same sort of problems as you get in the Division. That there was a bit of a difficulty spike when I encountered my first enemy with a grenade launcher. Now that in itself isn't a massive problem, but when I was running on my own just to sort of give it a try, it meant that up to that point, everything going on was pretty easy. There was no single enemy I struggled with or had to really plan for, but suddenly confronted with this enemy who could instantly kill half my health with a single shot, with very little warning. It's just not the sort of difficulty spike I can be bothered to play past. Now, I did go in and get a little bit more gameplay in, and yeah, it's alright, but I'm very much feeling those RPG-like shooter vibes, and to be fair, I only really have space for one of those in my life at any point in time, and for all my sins, it is currently Destiny 2, so once I've ground what little content is left in it, I might end up switching again, having a bit of a play, but for now, I think I'm going to wait till the price drops a bit.
One of ours just got hit!
Agent killed.
So, thank you for watching again. Hopefully I've dealt with some of the audio issues I've had in previous videos. So changing the setup pretty much week on week at this point, but just trying to make whatever improvements I can. But hopefully you enjoyed that video. If you did, please like. If you didn't, please dislike. Subscribe if you want to see some more content like this, I guess. But in the meantime, hope you have fun, and see you around.